program in alignment by University and CIAT. And today talk about direct seeding of rice at CIAT and IRRI, experience, lesson learning, and use of technologies. Who we are? We are part of the CGIAR, and we are one of the 3 centers working with rice in the Latin America. The rice program ensure current intake for the rural and urban communities with a Henry about on the nutrition, rice sustainable and climate-friendly practice, contribute to the decent world and economic growth of the reinforcements of rice value chain in Latin America. The rice program divide into 8 areas: planting, breeding, impact assessment, ground quality, biotic resistance, abiotic resistance, phenotypic or phenomic, molecular marker, and agronomics. Our history, CIAT participate in different countries, and actually participate in 24 countries, and CIAT help develop varieties in actually 230 varieties in Latin America, and CIAT work with partnership. One partnership is FLAG. FLAG actually participate in 70 countries, and actually with CIAT help develop 99 varieties. IRRI is another partnership. The objective IRRI is develop hybrids in America, in Latin America. In actually, CIAT and IRRI developed 2 varieties in Latin America. The last partner is biofortificate. Biofortificates participate in 16 countries in Latin America, and actually CIAT help develop 2 varieties in Latin America. This is the impact area. The program breeding divide into 2 groups. The first group is the tropical zone, and the second group is the temperate zone. And the developed varieties focusing the yield potential, yield established, blast resistant, hoja blanca virus resistant, resilient to climate change, and grain quality, amylose, milk and cooking, and biofortificate. This is the organigram. The Geraldton coordinate level 6. The name level 6 is crop and nutrition. Maria Fernanda Alvarez is our leader and breeding. Gloria Mosquera is for pathology. Maria Camila Rebolledo is for physiology. Jerome Bartolome is for breeding biofortificate, and Manu Shitani and Michael Separat is coordinate group phenomic. And Eduardo Glateron is the leader or FLAG. This is the breeding pipelines. Rice focusing in rice irrigates and hybrid and inbreed. Maria Fernanda Alvarez is the breeding temper and tropic hybrids. Hybrids in the Edgar corridor is breeding in the temper. Irrigation, gel deterioration, interculture, seeds purification. The next platform is rapid generation advance. We use single seed descendant system, great number of recombination pure family, reducing of the sex cycle and generation. And in the presentation, focus in the planting platform. The service planting platform is seeds increase, phenomic evaluation, nursery established, and test cost. Okay, CIAT have two places in evaluate to germoplants. The first place is Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa located in Villavicencio. The objective, the play is evaluate biotic resistance, geo-evaluation, phenomic characteristic of breeding lines in the field. The first test starts of direct seeding in 1986. Sowing capacity is 25 hectares in direct seeding. The sowing dates, one sowing per year, usually is April and May. And the test focusing seed increments, test cross, nursery, geo-evaluation, and more specific test biotic and resistance. Initially, in the place have 12 tests with 5,468 plots. Okay. And another place is the CIAT Palmira. In the place have two sowing methodology and direct seeding and transplanting. The objective is evaluate and yields evaluate some phenomic characteristics of breeding lines. Sowing capacity 7.9 hectares, 3.89 in direct seeding and 3.16 in transplant, 17 in transplant. Sowing dates, 2 sowing per year, the first in April, May, and the second in October, November. The test sets in cranes, hybrid seed production, test cross, nursery, and geo-evaluation. And response variables, the objective depend on the objective on the breeder and the generation to be planted. This is the trial in the field. The first is 6 increments. The capacity actually in SIA is 5,040 genotypes per year, and the sowing area is 4.5 square meters. And the variables depend to the trial. The second trial is test cross, usually 500 and 800 genotypes per year. The sowing area is same in the seed increments. And the last is geo-evaluation. Geo-evaluation in direct seeding, the maximum capacity is 5,000 genotypes in direct seeding. Okay, in the last year, in the last year, the RICE program implemented different different process. I can see four process divided in direct seeder. The first process is pre-sowing. Usually germination test in soil. Grades than genotypes 18%. 6 index is very important in direct seeding. Dormant of seeds, usually breaking dormant in temperature. Seed treatment, fungicides and insecticides. Soil analysis, usually soil analysis and soil mechanization start before 30 days of sowing. And the soil mechanization depend the conditions. Usually rotospeak, disc plow, disc harrow, and laser leveling. Laser leveling is very important in direct seeding and with control. Another part is the sowing. Usually one application, one initial application in the sowing, planting time, soil moisture, and the genotype. The genotype is important in the sowing use or varieties or hybrids. The varieties use 18 kilograms per hectare, and the hybrids use 40 and 45 kilograms per hectare. And irrigation, usually one germination with 25 millimeters water for in the train. And the fertilization depends soil analysis. The another is establishment. Establishment irrigation. The irrigation depends to the soil moisture, and that idea is is the soil permanence in the field capacity. Fertilization, 2 or 3 moments depend to the trail, with monitoring is important. Herbicide application use post-emergence, and after 20 days establish layer of the field. And the last is harvest time, usually monitoring grain moisture, 22 or 24%, and the harvest usually is mechanized, use hardware or hardware master. And this is the irrigation and application equipment. This is the technology using the CIAT. The first increase in plant emergence in 20 or 35%. The maximum capacity is 1.4 hectares. And the use in the system, great control in the use of water, more distribution, and frequency of irrigation. And the second technology is the drone application. We use drone reducing application time. Usually drone can apply 1 hectare in 5 or 15 minutes. Less use of the water. 1 hectare, drone can apply 1 hectare. We use 12 liters of mix per hectare. Grid and uniforming in application, lower expense of the chemical for people. The another technology is the crop rotation, that EDI is sowing in the first summer's rice, and the second summer's another crops. Usually crotalaria, usually use crotalaria, beans or forage. That EDI in beans and forage is start screen the different genotypes and develop genotypes. I can adaptation in the field. The mechanization hardware. The program have two combined hardwares. The first is transplanting, and the second combined is the direct seeding. The combined hardware is one particularly he can determine the yield in real time. This is the result in the combined harvesting, one map in the moisture, one map in the hay, one map in the yield. And the impact that exceeded and technology in Latin America and Caribbean, 18% of the rice area is planted in direct seeding. Save 18% water use in the preparation, depend on the water regimen of sowing hair, reduce matter emission and 65%. Improve soil quality and fertility with rotation of reducing the pesticide use. And we're using the different technology in America Latin. I can reduce area, increment the yield and increment the production. Thank you.
Christian, thank you so much. Yeah, very nice. I'm very impressed with the presentation. Very good progress.
Hello, my friend Christian. Congratulations for the nice presentation. Congratulations also on the advancement of technology, especially on the mechanization of machine used for DSR. Can you share your experience, especially on the machine that you said that it is capable of determining the yield in real time? I'm really excited on that. Can you share our website?
in the machinery, the combine, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, the combine is the process, is important for harvest master. It's important grain density. For example, grain density change in the genotypes. For example, in hybrid or for okay, it's very important in harvest time and grain density. Okay. Sorry.
So generally that machine that you're seeing here is used for plant breeding trials. It can handle small plots, 1.5 meter wide, 5 meter long, like we plant in our breeding trials, you know. And the advantage of that machine is that you are running it, it has a harvest master on it, which is basically able to measure the moisture content and yield real time. And then you can discard the sample and you can keep a subsample if you want to do any grain quality and other things. So very, very simply, it is going to give you very fast turnaround time in terms of yield and other things. You do not have to bring the bulk of the straw and then do it manually and those kind of things. So that's what that machine is for. I hope that's good. If there is anything specific, we can also talk about that.
Hello.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, Abdel, go after you. After you, Abdel.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Thank you so much, Christian, and especially for Africa, that's the future. There's no way we can continue with transplanting anymore. But it's good to see there is light. It's not at the end of the channel, but probably closer than the middle of the channel to really move forward. My question is for Christian first. I know CIAT spent a lot of time, many years, as you have shown, 6-7 years or more, working on standardizing this system. And now it is working. Do we really need to wait that long? Or can we learn from CIAT to cut that circle as shorter as we can? And I think the only thing we need to do is adapted varieties for our local system. But any technical aspects, we hope that we will really rely on the experience of CIAT instead of developing these technologies here, but transfer them directly to the region and adapt them. And as Shalab said also, we need to train our partners to make sure that they will troubleshoot all the machinery, all the equipment that we have, and we will have this institutionalized in our system locally in Africa. The second question I have for you, Christian, is there is some challenges that are tough. And one of them we have highlighted here is weeds and nematodes, and probably other soil-borne diseases which will evolve over time. And we have seen that also in some places where they started direct seeding system. How did CIAT manage that? Because it's very tough to get a reasonable level of nematode resistance, for example. Weeds in Africa are real challenge. So we also will hope to learn from CIAT on how can we handle these things that are really becoming bottlenecks for direct seeded rice right now to go forward. One last question for Shalab. When can we really loudly start talking about direct seeded rice for Africa?
Do you want me to? Yeah, so you were saying when can we stop leveraging? Is that what you said?
When can we start talking about?
Oh, you mean direct seeded rice for Africa? Absolutely. I mean, as far as the efforts go, it's already ongoing. That one pipeline that I talk about at all points of time, that is Africa-specific pipeline. Actually, we are running it very seriously. The DLSR pipeline, the rainfed pipeline that we are talking about. And when it comes to the germplasm, the type of germplasm that we are working, super types and the specific diseases, the specific traits that we are talking about, we are very seriously working in that direction. So that is the one point that we can definitely look into. The first set of lines, we were already advancing this in yesterday's meeting. So I'm hoping that it will move, and if found right, it will probably make it. And that's when probably we can start, placing them in the right areas and so on. That's one of the other things as well. Yeah.
I think this is very important question of it. So I'll just give one example. The Scale Direct project. So initially when we designed the project, we were anticipating that much of the focus would be on India, so to say South Asia. And we also had 3 countries from Africa, Kenya, Mozambique and Tanzania. Through all our outreach, all the efforts that are in place, and thanks to Shalab, thanks to Daniel, thanks to some of our collaborators from IRRI as well, we're collaborating with them. Now, even the donors are talking about African countries for Scale Direct. Even the donors are talking about Mozambique, Kenya and Tanzania for Scale Direct. Thank you.
Okay, and the question in the German class is good. Maria Fernanda, do you write Maria Fernanda? I can discuss the material using in the app. Okay. In the second question is the control week. Is very important. Use the primer gen and the post gen. Do you can good primer gen and no problem the weeks in the field? Okay. Nematodes. No. In the CIAT, no problem nematodes.
I can add to two of those points. One is that when we were in CIAT, we talked about the germplasm exchange topic a little bit. So with CIAT, that is what we are designing in the global rice breeding program with the alignment. And not seen that in CIAT, but we are working really for that one.
So I think just to give you an idea, the global rice breeding program of CGIAR involves IRRI, CIAT and AfricaRice all, and I think we are working with RBI. And the experience that Latin America has in ESA, we are leveraging that. The recent visit to Latin America was a part of that exercise, and even before that, we have had consultants from Latin America, from Florida, who are looking at its potential application of course, IRRI has a strength in germplasm. We have been looking at the traits, but for last 30 years scale up in agronomy is new to us, just to be frank with you. The challenge with Latin America and Africa is Latin America, the farm sizes are, like in Uruguay, the average farm size is 500 hectares, and that's a small farm. Versus in Africa, you can probably know better than I do. So this is where things are, we are working on things with them. And I think that collaboration is part of the exercise of leveraging the benefit from them. And that's why we've been working with them so closely. So, that's wrong with them. So the recent visit we had in CIAT was very impressive. The agronomy, I think, more inspired by Peter Jennings, his own style there. And the philosophy that they have in Florida is quite interesting. Test and then apply. Figure out what it is, understand how the soil is, so they have heavy focus on understanding your plots, your soils, the analysis, and also herbicide application is based on the need. So I think there's some basic principles of agronomy being followed which are very impressive. I know we are stronger in breeding, but we have to complement each other in that, and that's the only way to move forward in CGI, and that's what we are exploring there. So we hope over time we'll have a DSR system for Africa, which is tailored and based on these experiences. And that should sound convincing, not just in silos, but we are working together. And I think that's a good thing for Tanzania, for example. Although we have a center of excellence in Kenya, where the colleagues could really see how things are evolving. But that's a commitment, and I hope, with the smaller machineries that we are hoping. Because at the end of the day, you can't just say this system is something you want to scale up and have no machines for the small scale farmers. So I think I was talking to Tari DG yesterday, we'll need a strong help from the local mechanization. I think Shala has mentioned there. We can currently buy some machines, but the sustainability of the system will not be there if we cannot locally manufacture and repair those machines and make them available cost effectively to the farmers. I think so. Those are the couple of areas, not just breeding. We are strong in breeding and we continue to build that germplasm that is really for DSR, but we'll also look at all the other 11 aspects of it, and we are very serious about it. So I hope, as somebody mentioned, it's a clean slate here. there's a lot of scope, and I think the trials that we have conducted really is testimony of that we can really reinforce that more. So just wanted to add that. I hope that sheds a bit more light and clarifies our strategy.
Thank you, Sankal. Yeah, so very quickly, and then this is going to be the last comment before our coffee break. Yeah, we're just mindful about the time as well. And then the rest of it, I know it's very interesting, so the rest of the discussion we can take over the coffee break, or maybe even later on.
This is not your field. I'm an economist and I'm also doing impact assessment. So, given that direct seeding is running for a long time in CIAT, so do you know that any farm level evidence on the advantages of using direct seeded compared to transplanted, or any other, like in water management, in income? Do you know some metrics on that? Thank you.
I can answer on his behalf. I think based on what we have learned from, see, I'm also not very much expert on the complete details, but based on what we learned from the impact assessment presentations in CIAT when we were there, first things first, there is really no transplanting there, and they really don't feel like, there is no need to compare and whatnot. The other thing is there is a very detailed impact assessment activity going on there on the direct seeded systems itself, for various varieties, for various package of practice, for each of the countries, and so on and so forth. In fact, there are a lot of points where we could learn and leverage from each other, and I believe Val has been involved in some of those studies as well. Maybe I can stop at this point. We can have more detailed conversations offline. Thank you. Sure. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Listen, thank you so much again. Yeah. I mean, as you can see, it's very interesting. So many of them would like to catch up with you one-to-one. Please feel free to do that. Yeah. Thank you. So now we'll break for Kena.
Includes is focused on stakeholders, all rice value chain stakeholders, intelligence, where you characterize the market segments through a set of development indicators. So this is more top-down. It uses indicators. It uses statistics, which is really important, and it brings both of these types of market intelligence are brought together to help design product profiles. So what I want you to a big type of mills and analyze the data we have so far in more detail. And I think that's me, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Maureen, yeah, you can show screen. You want to analyze? You can look at different types of indicators. There are the breadth indicators, which are the numbers, and then you have the prevalence and depth indicators, and those are more the percentages and the per capita universities, and then some cross-craft indicators. Next, please. So here is just an example of one out of the 173.
Schumann, the Seed Trader Association CEO in Tanzania, and I would like to give 2 comments or 3 like that. First of all, I congratulate all those who are presenting. I've tried to follow up some of the presentations, but unfortunately, I can't see the screen very clearly from here. So I'm hoping that the proceedings will come out later and the breeders will follow what was being presented, because it is very important indeed, and a lot of time is being put into these presentations, which are very important. Having said that, I would like to comment especially on the issue of market intelligence. This one has been very interesting indeed, and in my opinion is that researchers, especially in Tanzania, it's only but fair now that they go back to the research stations, and it is said a lot of materials are in the shelves. They keep on using that statement, that they are in shelves and not being productive at all. So if they can go to the shelves and check what did the other breeders do and upscale that, it's important so that they get out the best materials, which can also be used as indicators from the market intelligence of what did the preferences of the farmers was at that particular time when those breeders were there. Considering that the breeders are public employees, they come and go, but a lot of work is done and left in the stations. So my advice, they should also use those materials and upscale it. And the other one is on intensive collaborative research. It's important that now, as the last presenter just put out the farmers' preferences from Kenya and Tanzania, it's important that breeders in Tanzania and within the East African country or bloc of SADC for that matter, that they know what does the farmers want in their countries. And then all of them try and segment what they should breed so that they can satisfy the food security of the area. It's important they sit together and understand what they are doing, instead of everybody doing it for his own country. And finally, I was talking on capacity building. In many donor presentations, if you look on them, or grants for that matter, they always talk of this should not go to infrastructure. Yeah. There are no funds for infrastructure. We have to avail some funds for infrastructure. If we go to the infrastructure and research stations now, are those infrastructures which were there 20, 30 years ago, they are not expanding. Let's have some amount of money for expanding the infrastructure for every program, so that within a certain space of time, we would have really achieved a lot of expansions. And training for that matter. Breeders, as I said, they come and go. We have to continue training more young breeders to replace those who are exiting. If we don't put a lot of effort into training more breeders and upscaling those who are there, then we'll end up not actually achieving the food security requirements, which is very challenging. And finally, I like the presenter who talked about the machines, the planting machines. In Tanzania, we have different institutions which can do that job of designing, taking what already has been designed and producing in your own country. So I really recommend that one. It can be done in many countries, and in my country, Tembo and Kamatek can do that job. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for all those very, very important remarks. So I'm not sure if we could just call that as a proceeding, but a meeting summary surely would be available. Yeah, so meeting summary would be developed and then it will be available. Maybe I think a couple of other were comments. Not sure if you had any specific question there, but comments, right?
No.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. And maybe very quick reflection on the infrastructure improvement. So you probably you were not sitting through yesterday's session. Much, Mel, Matty. It was a wonderful presentation. And
a few minutes just on new opportunities to manage biotic and abiotic stress in the breeding programs, particularly through the use of major genes that we've been bringing into the elite material. So this is how I'm going to structure the talk. We'll start off by talking about, with an update on our deployment products that we've been producing, so what genes have been deployed and where we are with that. I'll spend most of the time actually going through the phenotypic validation of these genes that we've been going through deploying into the elite material, particularly focusing on these ones, RYNV, salinity, grain, zinc, bacterial blight and blast. And then I'll finish off with just a brief mention of our augmentation activities, and then again just a brief mention on using these genes in the mainstream breeding process. So by way of introduction, just to recap on what the deployment and augmentation pipelines at IRRI are aiming to achieve. So the deployment and augmentation pipelines exist sort of alongside and parallel to the mainstream breeding process. And their primary purpose is to incorporate major genes from, landrace backgrounds from the gene bank into elite parents that can be used in the mainstream breeding cycle. So we've been going through a lot of, effort to identify elite lines and use these as parents in the breeding cycle. This is aimed at, the deployment and augmentation pipelines are aimed at introducing valuable new genes into those elite parents to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of that breeding process. So it's important to note that the focus of these activities is not to produce a new variety. The purpose is to produce a new parent that can be used in the mainstream breeding process. We're not trying to produce a new variety with a one-off impact. We're trying to produce parents that can go into the mainstream breeding process and through that achieve ongoing impact into the future. So essentially there are two stages here. The first, sorry, I'm getting feedback there. The first stage is the deployment, which is where we take a valuable gene from the landrace donors and introduce that to an elite genetic background. So the focus here is about producing a very high quality introgression. So that involves a lot of background selection to eliminate that unfavorable landrace background, and also recombinant selection around the target gene to reduce any influence of linkage drag. Then the outcome of that is at least one elite donor line, which can be used directly in the breeding process, of course, but more frequently would then be used in the line augmentation process, which is essentially aiming to upscale the frequency of that new gene as quickly and as rapidly as possible into a wide variety of elite genetic backgrounds. So between the two of these stages of the deployment process, we get a high quality introgression into a range of different elite backgrounds that can be used in the mainstream breeding process. So this has been ongoing for a number of years, and don't worry, most of you won't be able to read that very well, but we will make these slides available. So this has been ongoing for a while now, and so we have a range of different genes already completed in terms of the deployment process. So there's more than 50 genes, and QTLs have already gone through the deployment process, and we have these available in a fully elite indica background. So you can see the full link. You can see the full list on this link here. Here are the fixed line designations. So if you're interested in any of these genes, you can just write to IRRI and say, I want some seeds of this particular line. Of particular interest are some of our pyramid lines. So these are lines that contain more than one gene as a package, and I'll be talking about a bit about these, particularly the blast pyramid here with our major blast resistance genes. So just on those deployment products again briefly, this is what they look like across the genome. So the ones that I've highlighted in yellow are genes where we have completed the deployment process. And this means we have introgressed these with a greater than 95% recovery of the elite indica background. And the introgression size is less than 2 centimorgans. So there's really very little chance of linkage drag associated with these genes. Now, at the moment, most of these genes are in the IRRI 154 background. And the purpose of the augmentation then is to diversify the genetic backgrounds that these genes are available in. So moving on to the validation of these things, in addition to, once we finish the deployment process, part of our distribution strategy is to give the seeds over to the mainstream breeding programs, so the early, medium, and late maturity breeding programs. And as they wish, they can include those in the trialing process. The advantage of that is we can then see whether these genes have any penalty in terms of yield. And so far we've only got 1 year of data on that, but looking at a number of different locations here, we are seeing that these genes that we have introgressed are not having any detrimental effect, at least in terms of yield, based on the IRRI 154 recipient parent. So we'll look at now in a bit more detail at some of those specific traits. But before we do, I just wanted to give take a brief aside on stewardship of our disease resistance genes. So many of the traits that we've been dealing with are targeting various different diseases. And we have a lot of very effective genes against these various different diseases. But there's no one gene which is effective in all locations against all isolates of these diseases. So no matter which gene you use, there will always be isolates which are able to overcome that gene. And if we need to think carefully how we use these genes in the breeding process, or it will just be a very short time until those genes are overcome and the value of that gene starts to be lost. So resistance genes are a finite resource. We don't have an infinite number of them, and if we use these in the wrong way, we're going to lose the benefit of those genes relatively quickly. And so what we need to do is develop a strategy for using these genes, which is going to preserve their effectiveness as far as possible into the future. Now, there are a number of different strategies that have been, proposed or in different ways to use these genes, and I won't go through the details here. Essentially, we are starting off with a situation like this, where the use of these genes is essentially random. The problem is this is going to promote the breakdown of resistance fairly quickly. So we need to develop other strategies to use these. Now, I won't go through the details of these, but long story short, the one that has the best promise and is fairly well established for many diseases in many different species is the use of a combination of more than one gene. So rather than just relying on one gene to promote resistance, we rely on a combination of 2 or 3 or more different genes to produce a very robust and durable resistance. And this has been validated in many species against many different pathogens. So as I go through, I'll be coming back again and again to this idea of using a pyramid of multiple genes. So to get into that, first of all, I wanted to start off with rice yellow mottle virus. Now, we've already heard this mentioned a number of times during the meeting, and I don't really need to introduce you to what RYMV looks like. But in terms of resistance to RYMV, there are 3 major genes that have been identified in previous literature, and these are RYMV1, 2, and 3. And in addition, at the RYMV1 locus, there are a number of different alleles that have been identified with greater or lesser extent of activity. Now, the resistance of RYMV1 has been shown to have a distinct geographic partition between East and West Africa, such that RYMV1-2 is mostly effective against isolates that are prevalent in West Africa, and RYMV1-3 against isolates in East Africa. Now, that's a very broad generalization. Obviously, there's a lot of exceptions to that rule, but this is the way it has been reported so far in the literature. Then we have the other 2 loci, RYMV2 and RYMV3. RYMV2, according to the limited literature that is available, has a spectrum of resistance that is kind of similar to RYMV1-3, and then RYMV3 has just a different spectrum. It's just not really like any of the other genes. So essentially what this means is we cannot rely on any one of these genes to give us a broad spectrum resistance across all of our target geographies. We are probably going to need some sort of a pyramid, and so one of the questions that we need to answer is what combination of genes are we going to use? We can certainly use RYMV2 and RYMV3. These are on different chromosomes, so we can easily use those together. But at the RYMV1 locus, which allele of RYMV1 are we going to use? Now, currently the strategy that we are targeting, and I'll talk about a little bit about why, is this combination of RYMV1-5 with RYMV2 and RYMV3. Now, if we look at the donor sources of these genes, RYMV1-2 is available from Rhiza sativa, from the variety Gigante and 1 or 2 other landraces. But this is the only gene, the only resistance allele that is available from Rhiza sativa. All of the rest of these genes and alleles come from Rhiza glaberrima donors. So introducing these into the mainstream breeding program is obviously an extremely difficult proposition. Sativa and glaberrima have extreme reproductive isolation barriers, but we have now done this. We have transferred all of these genes from whatever their starting donor landrace was, whether it was sativa or glaberrima. We've made these integration into the elite indica background. And again, these are our fixed line designations. The background recovery, you can see in these cases actually the background recovery is higher than what we usually target, because we really wanted to eliminate that Rhiza glaberrima background. And the integration size you can see here. So all of these are now completed. We have these integrations into IRRI 154 background. And for most of these, we have done at least 1 season of seed increase now as well. So we have 4 or 5 kilograms of seed that is available for distribution. Some of these have already started to be used in crosses. So the RYMV1-2 line, which was actually the first one we completed, has been used in some populations in 2021. as I say, you know, the R1V2 and 3 deployment products are complete now, and then the 1-2 and 1-5 lines have been tested at AfricaRice just this year. So this is what they look like in particular. So these are various integration into the IRRI 154 background. So these ones are not the R1V resistance genes, these are other genes. And you can see that, you know, IRRI 154 and these other neurostogenic lines are quite susceptible to riceula model virus. But the R1V 1-5 line is showing very good resistance there. So what they found is that they only had these two nils here, the 1-5 and 1-2, and they found that the 1-5 was superior to 1-2 in Western Africa. For two reasons. It produced a higher level of resistance. So 1-2 did show some mild symptoms. It was definitely, you know, more resistant than not having it, but it did show some mild resistance, some mild symptoms, I should say. And it also had a broader spectrum of resistance to different isolates from around the, you know, the West African countries there. So according to their results, 1-5 is superior in West Africa. And I think Joseph might have some updates on its effectiveness in East Africa as well. So currently the strategy that we are pursuing then is that combination of 1-5 with R1V2 and R1V3. So we already have F1 established that has all three of these genes in the same plant. And so once we get the F2 of that, we will be able to select our fixed lines containing all three genes. In addition, we are developing a couple of linkages. So so R1V2 here is very tightly linked, but in repulsion phase, to the D2I 1.1 QTL for drought tolerance, and then this salinity tolerance QTL here. So we've already developed a couple of linkage between R1V2 and the salinity gene, and we will be adding in D2I 1.1 through the next generations. And likewise, R1V3 is moderately linked to one of our major blast resistance genes, PIKH here, and more loosely linked to some of our bacterial blight resistance genes. So again, you know, this coupled linkage here we've already constructed, and this one is underway. So moving on to salinity, I mentioned that salinity gene. Here's just some of the evidence behind that. So we have our very clean neurostogenic lines in the IRRI 154 background, and when we put these in the field, compared to IRRI 154 here, you can see that these lines are performing much better under field conditions. In addition, we have put this gene through the augmentation process, and so we have integration lines in a range of different elite backgrounds, and we've been able to show that this gene is effective across most of those elite backgrounds. And this is the SES scores from the field. So this is a very promising gene. It is for vegetative stage tolerance, not for reproductive stage, I should say, but it is effective in the field, and it is stable across various elite backgrounds. Grain zinc, this is an important target for the last few years. So there is a significant QTL that's been identified from GWAS studies from other people at IRRI. And so again, we were making integration of these into the elite indica background. These are not yet fully complete, but they are almost complete. And so we put some of our sister lines, plus and minus QTL, into the field last season, just to have a bit of a pre-look at whether it is likely to be working. And so what we found is that the lines with the QTL are showing about a 45% improvement over the lines that do not have the QTL, at least in that particular trial. So this is definitely not definitive proof that this QTL is working well, but it is highly suggestive that this QTL, could have a significant benefit. In addition, this QTL interval is quite large, and so one of the things that we are pulling out of these late stage integrations is resources to help to narrow that QTL interval. Bacterial blight, an emerging problem in Africa, and there's been a lot of good work done on the molecular genetics of bacterial blight resistance. And so the strategy that is emerging for resistance to bacterial blight is to use these sweet genes. Now, these are sugar transporters that the bacterium uses. It induces the expression of these sugar transporters in order to feed itself on infection. So mutations in the promoter of these sweet genes remove that ability of the bacterium to induce their expression, which leads to reduced infection. Now, there are 3 of these sweet genes that the bacterium, current isolates of the bacterium actually use. These are sweet 11, sweet 13, and sweet 14. And the hypothesis is that if you have complementary promoter mutations of all 3, then you'll get a very durable, very robust resistance against all isolates of bacterial blood. So that's the strategy that we've been pursuing. So in terms of introgression products, we have our sweet 11 or XA13 was completed some years ago. We now have this combination of sweet 13, sweet 14, together with 2 other bacterial blight resistance genes, XA21 and 23, and this is the fixed line designation there. So these fixed lines are now available and they're being tested by the pathology team. So far I have results from the XA13 introgression line, and so you can see that IRRI 154 is actually pretty resistant to bacterial blight already, but there are some isolates which are able to at least partially overcome IRRI 154. And so then when we add in XA13 on top of that, we do see an improvement in resistance there. So XA13 is working, and soon we will have the results for the other combinations of bacterial blight resistance genes. The advantage though is, previously, in terms of yield, IRRI 154 obviously is quite a decent yielding line. The donor lines for this IRBB 60 though has a much lower yield, but the XA13 integration has a yield similar to IRRI 154. So currently we are combining the pyramids for bacterial blight, RYMV and blast. I'll come to the blast pyramid in just a sec. So we're now in the process of combining these things together into a package that can be used together. One thing that has come out with some of the recent work from the pathology team is they've advised us we need to swap out the allele that we had previously targeted for sweet 14. So previously we had targeted an allele from Oryza sativa, but the pathology team is advising us that there's a particular allele from Oryza glaberrima that is better. So one of the things that we will be doing is swapping out that sweet 14 allele. And then finally, blast resistance. So for blast resistance, again, we are pursuing a pyramid strategy here, which is a combination of PI9, PIKH, and PI35. So we've produced our single gene introgression lines here, and they have been extensively characterized by the IRRI pathology team and various partners around the world. And so if we look at particularly here, we can see these are isolates that have been chosen for their ability to overcome IRRI 154 for leaf blast. And so we can see that, whereas IRRI 154 by itself is susceptible to this isolate, some of these, either PI9 or PI35 is effective in producing resistance then. And the same goes for all of these other isolates. So there's no penalty observed when we look at isolates that IRRI 154 is already resistant to. We don't see any breakdown of that resistance through the use of these genes, but there is an expanded spectrum of resistance against isolates which are otherwise able to overcome IRRI 154. So the genes are working, they do produce an expanded spectrum of resistance, but the really important thing here is to note that this spectrum of resistance is complementary. So this isolate here, PI9 is effective and PI35 is effective, but PIKH is not, right? Likewise here, PI9 is effective and PIKH is effective, but PI35 is only partially effective, and so on and so forth. So basically, if across the isolates that have been tested, there is no isolate which is able to overcome all 3 of these genes. And so the hope is that once we combine these things into a single package, into a single line, that we will have very strong, durable resistance against all of the known isolates. So we have done that. We have produced this pyramid line, PI9, PIKH, PI35, along with aroma and a few other things in this particular line here. And this is now being tested by the pathology team. We've just as I was coming here, we've got some of the first results here for leaf blast, and indeed, so far they have not found any isolates which are able to overcome this particular combination. Oh, and I forgot to mention actually, so these are the results for leaf blast. We also see that these genes are effective for neck blast. So the hope is that we can use this combination of 3 genes to as a durable resistance strategy against both leaf and neck blast across many different regions. So this combination of 3 genes is also the focus of our 2023 augmentation activities. So we have 67 different recipients from the IRRI and AfricaRice breeding programs, and we are introgressing that combination of 3 genes into all of those 67 different recipient lines that we've been given. So we're not introgressing just one of those genes, we're introgressing all 3 of those genes as a package into all of these recipients. So we've already selected the BC1F1 for 40 of those different projects or recipients. There's another 9 that are under selection, as we speak. And so, over the next couple of months, we will be completing all of those selections. So what we've been able to achieve then is, initially, almost half of the genes that we might want to use in the breeding program are not available. We've been able to shift that to a situation where these genes are now available, so they've gone from this sort of distribution up to here. So these are now available to the breeding programs, but they are rare. They're only available in a very limited number of genetic backgrounds. And so now the focus is shifting over to the augmentation process to make sure these genes are not only available in the elite material, but they are available in some critical mass of elite backgrounds for use in breeding. So that brings me to the final slide, which is using these genes in the mainstream breeding process. So you're quite familiar with the mid-density panels that are being used to inform genomic prediction and so forth. But we also have these low-density tailored services through Intertech, which are specifically designed to enable major gene selection during the mainstream breeding process. So this service is tailored at about $2.50 per sample, which gives you 10 markers on each sample. And this, in terms of the breeding process, this is designed to operate during the line fixation process, where we are fixing 2 to 3 major genes per population. So if these genes are present and segregating in that population, then we can use these particular SNP IDs to select for those genes. So again, you won't be able to read that, but we'll make these slides available. So if you're interested in selecting any of these genes in the breeding process, these are the Intertech SNP IDs you can use. So that's my last slide. I did just want to say thank you to my team.
Any questions for Evan?
Use new traits or traits of importance into the elite materials in our breeding program. I have one question on blast evaluation. Are you doing it only for the screening? Are you only using isolates, or are you able to do hotspot evaluation? Because we've had a situation where materials sent to us, although they've shown resistance to the isolates, when you put them in the hotspot areas, they tend not to be sustainable.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So the answer is, we do actually have some results from hotspot testing in India and Bangladesh and so forth. So the question is, what's our validation strategy? Actually, it's both, right? So they're both hotspot testing and controlled inoculation have their advantages and disadvantages. So we don't want to limit the validation to one or the other. Actually, we want to have both. And which one you use really, I think, is a function of what resources you have available to you. But certainly, I would be very, very interested for you to grow these lines in your region and see, give me, pass back the information on which genes are showing resistance in your area. All of these single gene lines are available here. They have been distributed a number of years ago. So they are available in Kenya, in Tanzania, and Burundi, and so forth. The pyramid line, I would have to check my notes. It has been sent to some partners here, but I can't remember exactly who. So, but definitely, if you are interested in using and testing any of these lines, either contact, Rose and Alexis and so forth, or you can contact me at IRRI headquarters and we can arrange a shipment for you.
One more question. The panel or the isolates that you're using, what are the source of the isolates? Do you have some from the East and Central Africa region that you're testing with the panel, or are you only using the isolates from Philippines, collected in Philippines?
Yeah. Again, good question. Okay. So these isolates are all from the Philippines. So these are done through controlled inoculation at IRRI headquarters. We also have results from controlled inoculation and from hotspot testing in India and Bangladesh. So none of these results are from Africa. We do know from previous results using things like the IRBL lines that genes such as PI9 should be effective here, but I don't actually have results myself specifically from East Africa. These lines are also being tested at the moment in West Africa at AfricaRice as well. So I know after me, I think Joseph is going to be talking, so he may have further details there.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. I just want for my presentation. In fact, we are having these hotspot studies in Burundi, Kenya, Tanzania, and even Mozambique. We are having hotspot studies where we test all those, and we are setting up, we have, at least in Burundi, we have the inoculation possibility, where varieties that have shown maybe resistance in hotspots, which can be not resistance but escaping, we can test them intensively in favorable conditions for the pathogens, in controlled conditions where we can really confirm that it's resistant. So we are having, to complete the answer with the isolates, we are having hundreds of isolates now in Burundi, Tanzania, Mozambique, and Kenya, and we are happy to inform, you are from Kenya, so you will have a Baker Lab which will be concentrating all these isolates. We have them shifted to Everlyn now. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. I don't know if Damien, you want to add anything to what Joseph said?
Not really. I think Joseph made the important point that hotspot testing can have the problem of say false negatives, so lines that appear to be resistant but actually just didn't get any inoculum. And you yourself pointed out the issue with controlled inoculation tests that they're using isolates that were collected in previous seasons that may not necessarily reflect the isolates that are in the field today. So that's why I say both of those strategies are very important. It's not an either-or thing. We actually need both sources of evidence to really get a high degree of confidence that these genes are going to be effective. As I say, all of these lines are available here and are with Joseph and others in Africa here. So they are available for testing, and likewise, as I say, if ever there's a line that you can't find, we can always make another shipment from IRRI headquarters out, to you specifically.
Thank you, Damien. I think thanks, Emily. Just a couple of points. I think if we can formalize a little bit more, if you want to really get these lines and test it in your backyard, like let's say it's possible in Calro, I know you guys could do that, and elsewhere also. I just want to connect it back to maybe Joseph will cover that, the community of practice. I think the disease monitoring, disease characterization of the various isolate and phenotyping are important aspects of the breeding network. I think last year, Joseph, with the workshop that was conducted in Burundi, had the opportunity to invite almost 15 or 17 pathologists across various programs. I think we need to continue to reinforce the way of working of that network, which we in Asia called BioNet, it's exactly the same. It's a community of practice. Second thing was, if you really need to have those lines, I think and Damien will share the presentation, so please don't hesitate to contact him directly, and if you have any relevant genes or genes with multiple lines with multiple genes or pyramids, please let's initiate the process. I think let's say somebody like Casey, if you need something for your local crossing blocks, and I would also insist that we should also formalize genotyping processes. If somebody has something about whether it's F1 confirmation or trait marker genotyping with relevant genes in your pipeline or in your own crossing block, we should formalize that, because those are the things we can always provide help on. I think Damien and his team will be happy to help, but I think if there's an interest, let's sample that Ajay towards the end of the meeting. But I think these are things to really work on and take forward if we can. You know?
Just one other minor thing there. So, you know, obviously we are very, very keen for anybody to use these, both in terms of testing and in terms of crossing. I'm also very, very interested anytime you have some results to hear that back, you know, to get that feedback that, you know, this is working or this is not working or whatever. Because those results are really important. I can guarantee that, you know, there are many, many presentations like this that I give where people are asking the same questions. So if you have any results testing these lines, good or bad, that then can be incorporated into this, and so over time we develop a body of knowledge about these genes that is extremely effective and extremely important. Was there another question somewhere in the middle there? I have a question.
All right. So if not,
sorry, there's one question.
There's a donation.
For RMV, you said that except RMV 1-2, which is in gigant, other genes are in Clabelima type. There is another line that has been developed for BLB with the XA genes that we genotyped several times. Realize that it has 1-3. You can check in the form.
Yeah, so actually we had a similar issue that I was just discussing with Emily yesterday. I think I've tracked down what the problem is there. So those lines were genotyped on the DART platform. And DART, previously, they've recently changed their process, but previously DART did not distinguish between a failed sample, so a failed call on the sample, and a deletion. Now ROMV 1-3 and 1-5 are both deletions. So when you genotype on DART for 1-3 and 1-5, you don't actually know if you've got a deletion or if that particular sample didn't actually return a result. So these ones which are saying that there's 1-3 or 1-5 in a basmati line or whatever, my hypothesis is that that's a false positive. That's not to do with the operation of the marker, it's actually to do with how DART analyzes their results. Now we have been working with DART to get that fixed, and they have said that they're going to change that process. But previous data sets are prone to this particular issue of false positives. You won't get the same problem on Intertech with the low density markers, and you won't get the same problem on the mid density panel at AgriPlex. This is something that is specific to DART. So yeah, but if you have any questions like that, we can certainly work through that together, because it is a very important issue, and not one that we would normally come across in previous years. So let's contact and talk about that further.
Thank you, Daniel. And can we now have Joseph?
Through Dr. Ajay. Yeah, we are working with diseases. We are pathologizing. Pathologizing. Yeah. So we do this because these diseases can be a very hard limiting factor. It can happen that a whole crop is destroyed by blast or by RBI, but in general we can have a reduction of the yield with 30 to 40% easily. That's why we are not sleeping, and I am the one doing the presentation, but this work has been done together with George, with Noel Ladsas, that's the team in Burundi. We have Evelyn in Kenya, Farancelina in Mozambique, and Mukuya in Tanzania. This is the team under myself. And what we are doing now, I will present the update. The title was talking about updates and strategies for the challenging situations. But of course, you cannot have any update without a strategy. That's why I decided to start with the strategy for IRRI, East and Southern Africa, in terms of pathology. So we have 8 strategic lines. I will make sure that we understand each other there. So if you are working with diseases, the first thing you will do in a country will be to identify which diseases are limiting in this country. You cannot go further before you have identified the most important diseases. That's why this is our first job. Second, you have to identify what we call hotspot for each disease, so that you can conduct the studies that are necessary for you to get something that you will transfer to farmers. You have to pay attention with hotspots. From one season to another, a hotspot can be very hot or not hot at all. So you have to check if possible every season and every year, so that you can even know the dynamics of the pathogen in that situation. More seasons, more years you have, more comfortable you will be, because you will be able to get some conclusions. And after identification of hotspots, we need to identify which genes or which traits can be useful in these hotspots and in the environment. That's important. And for some diseases like blast, like RYMV, where we have major genes, as Damian was saying, IRRI has developed for blast, for BLB, has developed what we call near isogenic lines, differential lines. So these differential lines, when they are in hotspots, they can give you a lot of information, because they have known resistant genes, and you can test from one season to another which genes are still okay, which genes are useful, and this information will be very important for breeders, because a combination of breeders and the pathologists, that's the good combination that we are aiming for. Then there is on one side the plants that can be having resistant genes, but on the other side you have the pathogen. The pathogens never sleep, because when you have these resistant genes introduced in the field, pathogens will try always to have a way around and to escape or to break down the resistance. That's why after having tested, after having got a resistant gene, you have to test every season and see if it's still valid, if it's broad, if it's durable. Otherwise, you have to run again. And that's why we don't count on one gene, but on multiple genes. That's what he said, pyramiding. Then, what else? We have the hotspot stories, but we also have controlled conditions. I am on number 5. In controlled conditions, you can really test if varieties or lines that were resistant in hotspots, you can test them if they are really resistant, or if there was something like escape, a disease, there was no inoculum. That's why we always have a possibility to test under controlled conditions that favor the pathogen. This is here, controlled conditions. Then you can use the isolates harvested in different hotspots. And when you have a resistance, then you can be comfortable. 6, breeding lines in fields. I informed you that breeders and pathologists are working together, meaning that in our team, we have this job to accompany breeders We have to test all the materials that we are having in different trialing pipelines, so that we make sure that all the lines that do not resist to diseases, to important diseases, have to be stopped. They cannot continue with that. Otherwise, they will get something that is not useful to farmers. Then, after having identified good resistant traits, we have to work with breeders again to introgress them. That's what Damian reported. And this is a very important component of our strategy, networking. It means you should not have your results and sleep. You have to communicate. You have to make others know that you have found something that can be interesting for them. Then, after this introduction about the strategy, I go now on updates. The team in East and Southern Africa, IRRI team, we have been working hard. I presented you the members. And now we have identified what are the main diseases, what are the diseases that are important for our region. Pay attention, it can change from 2 years to 2 years, or even from 1 year to another. Now, blast is number one in our region. I should say even sub-Saharan Africa. You have RYMV, the virus that's causing a lot of trouble in the region. You have sheet rot complex. This is in lowland and in high elevation as well, because it's caused by fungi, but also by bacteria. That's why it's called sheet rot complex. It becomes a bit annoying. Now, Tanzania, you have a big experience with this. We have bacterial leaf blight that is not only emerging but damaging fields. It's a big trait now. Sheet blight, but also bacterial leaf streaks are also present, and they can be important from one country to another or less important. Those are the diseases that are causing problems, main diseases in East and Southern Africa. Further, so for each of those, I told you when you have identified the important diseases, you have now to be busy. We have been busy these years. First, for this is blast, RYMV, sheet rot, and bacterial leaf blight. We need to identify sources of resistance in order to inform breeders that we have something that can be useful. We need to identify useful genes, and for blast, for example, we have PI2, PI9, PI2, PI40 that are already present in good backgrounds with indica background. For RYMV, Damian has introduced already these genes, RYMV 1-2, 1-3, 1-5. For sheet rot, we don't know yet which resistant genes are in Moroberican and Zenit, but they are good varieties, they can help us. And for BLB, they talked about XA13, XA, but in our trials, we have not yet confirmed this. We still have to work on it. But what I have to mention here, we have hotspots for each of the diseases. We have done this exercise this year with my team. So we are in collaboration with the national programs. We have renewed the hotspot story, and we have completed this table. We have hotspots in Burundi, in Tanzania, in Mozambique, in Kenya for blast. For RYMV, we have Kenya, Burundi, and Tanzania here, Ifakara, Kiela, Ruvu. This for Mozambique we don't have because there was a flooding conditions. We could not have a crop at all. And for sheet rot we have hotspots in Burundi. For BLB we have hotspots both in Burundi and in Kenya and also in Tanzania. So we are ready to do the hotspots testing, and in each country we are doing our best so that we get inoculation systems that can help us to do controlled conditions, to do inoculations under controlled conditions. Yeah, in this, on this regard, I have mentioned Kenya as the center. We have Baker that can welcome some samples, but otherwise it's not easy to move pathogens from one country to another. It's almost impossible. Even in Kenya, when you have these pathogens in very controlled conditions of Baker lab, it's not evident that they will allow you to go and test them in a region, in another region, because we never move those pathogens. But what do? We can do in Nairobi, in Baker, we can do molecular characterization, we can do sequencing, but the controlled conditions for inoculations will have to be in countries. Yeah, so now, sampling, isolation, and characterization of pathogens. I start with an example of Burundi, but we did the same in Kenya, in Tanzania. Strategies to do the sampling, we need to consider the ecologies where we have rice. In Burundi, for example, we have the Imbo Plain, we have this middle altitude close to Tanzania, and you have a high elevation. So when we were doing this exercise, it's some months ago, for bacteria blight sampling, we needed to go around. So you see all the red spots, it's the fields where we took samples. More covered the country is, more comfortable you will be, because you will have all the different races of the pathogens. So this is an example for Burundi, where we have 588 BB samples. But in Kenya, we did the same strategy, and we have a map of Kenya. In Tanzania, we did the same strategy. We have a map of Tanzania with places where we took samples. And you can note this, we are quite ready. For blast, we have about more than 500 blast isolates. For RYMV, we have more than 1,000 samples that we are now collecting in a Baker lab in Nairobi, so that we can do the sequencing. We'll have a lot of information. And for bacterial blight, the emerging disease causing a lot of problems in the region, we have as much as 3,000 samples ready now for our studies. The pathogen characterization is in progress, and when I talk about characterization, it's a molecular characterization and also pathotyping characterization. We will be busy with that. I will go now about networking. It's not easy to give you all the updates, but networking, we now have something interesting that was introduced by Sankap. Thank you very much. It's the crop protection community of practices in sub-Saharan Africa, CPCOP. So this one, my bosses don't know, even my team, they don't know that this is, I think for this year, my best achievement. They don't know, but I will inform you, this is one of the best, because we did a special call, a special gathering, and we have now 26 countries in sub-Saharan Africa which are members of this network. I tell you, it's a network of multi-crop, because it's not only rice, but other diseases are there. It's a network of multi-crop, but multi-center as well. And we have been in contact with the 35 national programs that had participated to the survey we conducted. And I will tell you, I have still 2 minutes only, but I will give you a summary of the achievement with this crop protection community of practices. Look at this. We have, first of all, in each of these countries, we have all the contact people. Having people is a key point. So we have the DGs, we have the contact people for the crop protection community, and we have mapped all available crop protection expertise in each national program. So we have people who are there, how many PhDs, how many MScs, how many of these. We have them, so you can use this information. And we have assessed the current capacity in the centers in terms of laboratories, in terms of the inoculation possibilities, in terms of screen house. We have this information and it will be very useful. We have all the needs to serve the region. We are ready. We are ready now to work. And we have, very important, we have identified through this survey all the biotic stresses important for each country and for each center. Then, what is the way forward for this crop protection community? We have to exchange knowledge now, to start exchanging knowledge and challenges so that we can find solutions and we can advance together. Being a group for crop protection, we have, we don't have any excuse now, we have the information, we have to mobilize the resources and develop joint proposals so that we can have enough resources to go for subsequent actions. For the other way forward, sorry, I will just refer you to the strategy, what we have taken, what we have already done here. We know what is to be done. I invite you to come with me to do it. And don't forget about networking for collaborators. And I am there. I thank you very much for having listened to me. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So just a very quick addition before we invite the question. So this community of practices for crop protection, which Joseph has really elaborated, we are throughout Africa. That okay, guys, this database is already ready, or this setup is already ready. Now it's up to the community to really come together and make the best use of this this setup. Yeah. So thank you again, Joseph. So we'll talk more about that this upcoming opportunity. So any other quick question? Yeah. So Sankar.
I think it's not a question, it's just a comment. Again, I would like to sound like a broken record, but I just want to draw your attention to the pandemic management that happened in COVID. And I think that clearly underlines the merit of working together as community of pathologists or virologists or people who are experts in pandemics. I think it's the same situation for plants. We cannot wait, especially as Joseph said, until the pathogen has done its damage. So I think this is more of a preventive strategy, and especially where the molecular research is still in infancy in certain cases, especially some of the specific diseases we see in the region, like we have damages caused by RBI, and we have good leads, we have good genes, but I think I would encourage all of us as breeders or agronomists as well to really make sure that this message is clear within the institutions and that the pathology is appropriately supported, because as you see, it's a global responsibility. And I think I also want to thank you, Joseph, and the team, and all the 35 partners and growing, that they will really take this for CGIAR forward. And I think I'm glad to know that it's IRRI first here and with the national partners. So you have the lead. I think resource mobilization is not an issue. I will specifically help with this project to whoever is interested, because the case is very clear. I think you just have to prioritize which activities can be taken on by the network. I don't see there is a challenge in this kind of things. Thank you again very much.
So is there any question last? Yes. So this is going to be the last question, by the way.
Thank you. I want to congratulate Mr. Joseph because he do everything and he do best. I wanted to know which facility you have in your project and the problem, the difficulty you have and how to handle them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So these studies about pathogens, yeah, they need some infrastructure. So in IRRI Burundi office, where we have the hub for this community of practices, we do have disease lab. We have molecular biology lab for all the PCRs, not sequencing, but PCRs and all the exercise kind of training lab, but we have a grain quality lab. And we have the screen houses. So you need the screen houses, you need the inoculation setup. And the inoculation setup is just simple. I think we'll be able to help all the national programs to have their artificial infection possibility, because it's just a humid chamber where we put water and a blanket. You make it humid, pathogens are happy, you can bring the plant and then you can do the inoculation and have your exercise. But of course, practically you just need to come and do some training. It's a 1 week thing. And then for national programs, you will need that. And what will be limiting, when, as Sankar promised, we will be finding some resources for that. And together we can even send proposals in. What I know for the characterization, molecular characterization like sequencing, we have to outsource this. Yeah, so I hope I have clarified. What is needed is that simple. We can make it, I think, together.
Great. So Joseph, if the pathogens are happy, Rose as a breeder, Gilad as a breeder are not happy, but then Joseph is happy. So pathogens are happy, Joseph is happy. Yeah, with that, Joseph, thank you so much again. All right, so Sally, are you online, Sally? Sorry, we missed you before. Over to you now. So you get about 17 minutes. Sorry, we're just trying to cope up with the time. So you get 17 minutes, and then we'll have, I think, another 5 to 7 minutes for the question and answer. Sally, over to you.
Thank you very much. Next slide, please. So I'll just talk a bit about the progress in rice grain quality and the nutrition, what we have been doing at AfricaRice. There are two main areas I would talk on. I will talk on pre-breeding activities as well as breeding resource services. So for the pre-breeding activities, I'll speak about our market sorting experiments to review consumer preferred grain quality threats across Africa, which is followed through EP and the ABI. I'll talk a bit about sensory evaluation of white and parboiled meal.
I'm going to check quickly if there are any questions in the room. Yes, Julian.
The first question is a question and the second is a comment. The first one, I would like to get the range of good zinc material. How is zinc content range and for zinc and the iron, which is the range to say that this is a zinc line, this is a iron line. And the second one is about maybe a comment from what we were talking from yesterday. We are talking about varieties, and in most of the case, we are aiming the high quality rice. And then I would think that we forget that we are in Africa, where most of Africans are suffering from hunger. We did not think about those ones who don't need just to eat. And I was thinking that how we can produce good rice for less cost, which doesn't have those quality we are talking about, but just for eating. And then, because from what we saw yesterday, when we were combining treats, maybe from Suresh demonstration, when you're combining zinc, you're combining some iron, you're combining some other treats, good treats, you combine good quality, and then you are losing yield. What I think is that we can aim for good quality rice, as the one who's presenting this good quality rice, we go to a market segment or for some people and aim for those people who do not like good quality rice, just get something to eat. Thank you.
Sally,
quality has a range, okay? But in the rice industry, once you lose quality, you lose a lot in terms of a return on investment. So if you were to produce low quality rice, then that rice will have a lot of breakage, and you will have high post-harvest loss. I've done a study that showed the value, the loss in value due to quality is about 28% of the investment you make in the rice in the rice industry. So if you were to produce poor quality rice, you will be losing about 28% of your value. So why not produce good quality and gain that 28%? Okay, this is the first thing. Because if you say you don't care about quality, you produce high broken rice, you are going to lose them at the milling stage. So I don't think that is where you want to go. We should strive for getting high quality rice, not only at the breeding line, but post-harvest. At the same time, you have people who are not only hungry of energy, they don't lack energy, but they are really, the malnutrition problem is serious. Very, very serious. We have our children look at not memorize mathematical equation because of the poor nutrition that they have. So we need to produce diet that are nutritive, that would help them to face the next challenge of the century, which is competition in terms of technology. So we need to give them nutritious food to eat. So I think it's another important issue. They can have there are a lot of energy that they're supposed to have. So I think, and those energy foods, even most organizations are asking us to make them cheap as well. So the rice should not be something that we should keep aside. This is what I'll say about your comment.
Thank you, Julian.
I did not get something.